He had learned, over the last 6 months on the station, that when an alien went quiet, something was about to go very wrong. She was quiet now. They were alone in the linguistics wing, a softly lit corridor designed to accommodate 47 species with wildly different ideas of comfortable atmosphere. The walls hummed faintly, translating temperature and pressure in real time. The human, still not used to the way the floor subtly adjusted its gravity to his stride, was leaning against the console, skimming a data pad and pretending not to watch her from the corner of his eye. She stood across from him, tall and elegant in a way that felt deliberate rather than accidental. Her species favored symmetry the way humans favored chaos. Everything about her posture suggested confidence. Everything about her silence suggested calculation. That should have been his first warning. They had been working late again. That was how it always happened. Officially, he was her cultural liaison, there to help smooth translation nuances between human idioms and the rest of the galaxy. Unofficially, he was the only person she trusted to explain why humans said things like, "break a leg," and "sleep on it," without either laughing or filing a complaint. She had laughed tonight. That alone had felt like a small victory. "You humans," she had said earlier, her voice warm and melodic, "express affection in the strangest metaphors." He had shrugged, trying to look casual. "We're big on symbolism. Less direct." She had tilted her head, the way she always did when she was processing something interesting. "I find directness efficient." He remembered thinking, not for the first time, that efficiency could be very attractive. Now she was quiet, one slender hand resting against her midsection, fingers splayed gently as if feeling something beneath the surface. Her skin shifted color subtly, a physiological sign he had learned meant contemplation mixed with anticipation. His date pad beeped. He ignored it. She looked up, eyes locking onto his, and smiled. It was not the casual smile she used when she corrected his pronunciation. It was not the polite smile she used with diplomats. It was slow, deliberate, and unmistakably intimate. Every survival instinct he had screamed at once. She stepped closer. Not close enough to trigger station conduct warnings, but close enough that he became acutely aware of his own breathing. "I have reached a conclusion," she said. "Oh?" he replied, immediately regretting how tight his voice sounded. She placed her palm flat against her belly. The gesture was soft, almost reverent. "I want to feel your offspring grow inside me." The universe stopped. He didn't faint. He didn't scream. He didn't even move. His brain simply disconnected, like someone had yanked the power cable out of reality. Offspring. Grow. Inside. Her. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a checklist began to assemble itself at horrifying speed. Pregnancy. Responsibility. Earth laws. Galactic laws. His mother. The fact that he still didn't know how alien childcare worked. The faint memory of reading a briefing titled, "Cross-Species Reproductive Events, Avoidance and Liability." She was still smiling. Still touching her belly. Still very clearly expecting a response. He glanced down the corridor. 2 maintenance drones hovered nearby. A passing merchant species slowed, eye stalks swiveling toward them. He realized, too late, that she had not lowered her voice. "What?" he managed. "Do you mean feel?" Her smile widened, clearly pleased by his interest. "I have studied human expressions of intimacy extensively. You place great significance on the act of contributing genetic material. The idea of legacy. Continuation." A diplomat from a nearby office froze mid-step. She continued unbothered. "I find the concept fascinating. Profound. And you are an excellent candidate." Candidate. That word echoed like a siren. "Listen," he said, hands lifting in a placating gesture he'd learned was universally interpreted as panic. "This is wow. That's a lot." Her skin tone flickered, shifting toward confusion. "Is it?" "Yes," he said instantly. "It's very much a lot. A soft chime echoed down the hall as the translation algorithm updated itself. Someone gasped. She studied him carefully, eyes narrowing, not with anger, but curiosity. Your heart rate has increased. Your pupils are dilated. You are experiencing fear. I'm experiencing surprise, he corrected weakly. Fear and surprise are adjacent states, she said kindly. Do not be embarrassed. Embarrassed did not begin to cover it. A pair of station medics appeared at the far end of the corridor, drawn by raised voices and rapidly spreading rumors. A junior diplomat fainted outright. She finally noticed the attention and glanced around, clearly surprised. Is this not a private matter? He swallowed. On this station? Nothing is private. Her hand remained on her belly. The gesture, he realized with a sinking feeling, was being interpreted by everyone watching exactly the way his brain had interpreted it. The medics hurried closer. Sir, one of them said, eyes flicking between the two of them. We're getting alerts about a potential interspecies reproductive incident. I didn't do anything, he blurted. She turned to him, brow ridges lifting slightly. You have not yet, she said, genuinely puzzled. That is correct. The relief that flooded him was immediate and overwhelming. And the moment it showed on his face, just a fraction too much, just a breath too obvious, her smile faltered. Her hand dropped slowly from her belly. Her skin tone darkened. Oh, she said softly, understanding dawning in her eyes. You are relieved. The station held its breath. He realized, in that exact moment, that whatever he said next would determine whether this misunderstanding became a diplomatic incident, or something far more complicated. The relief lasted exactly 3 seconds. That was how long it took for every alarm system on the station to decide that something unprecedented and potentially catastrophic was unfolding in Corridor 17. A sharp, pulsing tone cut through the air. The lights shifted from their usual neutral glow to a sterile amber. Translation overlays flickered into existence above several heads, desperately trying to keep up as half a dozen species began talking at once. The medic nearest to them raised both hands. Everyone remained calm. No assumptions have been medically verified. That did not help. The merchant with the eye stalks emitted a clicking noise that the station helpfully translated as religious distress. A nearby insectoid delegate began vibrating, which meant excitement or panic depending on context. The junior diplomat who had fainted was gently propped against the wall by a service drone, still unconscious but already being recorded by someone's implant. She placed her hand on her abdomen. A voice whispered loudly. That is a gestational signal. It is a claim. Another corrected. A declaration of intent. It is a binding vow in my culture, a third voice said. Someone called the council. The human felt himself being nudged backward as the medics subtly positioned themselves between him and her, as if he were radioactive. One of them scanned him with a handheld device that hummed ominously. Human physiology confirmed. The medic muttered. Baseline stress response elevated. No signs of immediate contribution. He winced. Can we not call it that? She was staring at him now, eyes sharp, posture rigid. The warmth from earlier was gone, replaced by something proud and wounded. You did not answer, she said, her voice carrying easily over the noise. Is my interest unwelcome? No, he said too quickly. I mean, yes, no, this isn't about you. It's about everything. A cluster of station officials arrived, uniforms pristine, expressions already weary. One of them consulted a floating display, eyes widening. By the stars, she murmured. She's a senior linguist. And he's human, someone else said. Of course he is. A tall, thin alien with ceremonial markings stepped forward. As representative of the Reproductive Ethics Committee, I must ask, has an exchange of genetic material occurred? No, the human snapped. Not yet, she added calmly. That did not help at all. The Ethics Committee representative blinked. Not yet implies intent. It implies consideration, she corrected. Which is culturally significant. The medic's scanner beeped again. We are detecting elevated bioenergetic anticipation from the linguist. Another medic leaned in. Is that gestational? Possibly pre-gestational. The human's knees nearly gave out. Pre-what? She turned to him, genuinely surprised by his reaction. You did not research my species' reproductive cycle? I googled your cuisine and whether it was rude to refuse tea, he said faintly. I feel like that should count. Voices rose. Someone mentioned treaties. Someone else mentioned insurance liability. A holographic display popped into existence showing a list of cross-species incidents, all of them highlighted in red. Human involvement increases risk factors by 30%, an analyst announced. Emotionally unstable breeders, another voice said. Statistically proven. Hey, he protested weakly. She crossed her arms, skin tone shifting again, this time toward a sharp, offended hue. You speak of me as if I am reckless. That's not what they're saying, he said, though it very much was. A senior doctor arrived, older, calm, clearly tired of everyone. Enough. We will conduct a full evaluation before anyone panics themselves into an interstellar war. She inclined her head respectfully. That is reasonable. Then she looked back at him. You, she said, her voice lower now, private despite the crowd, expressed relief. He swallowed. Because when you said it like that, I thought it meant permanent, life-altering, irreversible. Her eyes softened just a fraction. And that frightened you? Yes, he admitted. Because if that were the case, I would want to be certain I was worthy of it. That seemed to confuse her more than anything else he'd said. Before she could respond, the senior doctor clapped his hands, creating a sharp echo. We are moving this discussion to Medical Bay 3. All non-essential personnel disperse. No one moved. The doctor sighed. Now. Reluctantly, the crowd broke apart, though many lingered just out of sight, clearly intent on listening in. The human found himself guided forward by a medic, while another gestured for her to follow. As they walked, he became painfully aware of the distance between them, just far enough that they weren't touching, just close enough that he could feel the tension humming like static. Inside the medical bay, the doors sealed with a soft hiss. The ambient noise dropped away, leaving only the gentle whir of diagnostic equipment. The doctor gestured for them to sit. Before we proceed, I need absolute clarity. She straightened, dignity intact. I expressed a desire to experience a reproductive cycle with him. The doctor turned to the human. And you interpreted that as immediate and permanent gestation? Yes. The doctor pinched the bridge of their nose. Of course you did. She frowned. Why is that unreasonable? Because, the doctor said carefully, your species does not reproduce the way humans do. The human looked up sharply. Wait. What? The doctor tapped a control, and a three-dimensional schematic appeared between them, filled with flowing light and unfamiliar symbols. Your species utilizes temporary bioenergetic symbiotes. The doctor continued addressing her. They form, develop, and dissolve within a single cycle. Yes, she said slowly. And humans, the doctor said, turning back to him, do not. The room went very quiet. He stared at the schematic. Dissolve? She followed his gaze, realization dawning as she finally understood the source of his fear. Oh, she said. The word carried weight. So when you said, he began. I meant a temporary, meaningful experience, she finished. One that leaves an emotional imprint. He let out a shaky breath, relief crashing through him again, impossible to hide. Her expression closed off instantly. That, she said coolly, was not the reaction I hoped for. The silence that followed was heavier than the panic had been. The schematic still hovered between them, luminous strands folding in on themselves in a slow, elegant loop. Temporary. Dissolve. Emotional imprint. Each word replayed in his mind like a delayed translation finally catching up to reality. He was relieved. He knew it. He could feel it in the way his shoulders had loosened, and the way his lungs finally drew a full breath without stuttering. And he hated himself a little for how obvious it must have been. She noticed everything. Her posture had changed, subtle but unmistakable. The openness from earlier was gone, replaced by a careful stillness that felt far more fragile than anger would have been. The senior doctor cleared their throat. To clarify, for the benefit of all involved, the reproductive process in her species is not permanent gestation. It is a short-term symbiotic development, typically lasting 6 to 8 of your days. 7, she said quietly. For me. The doctor nodded. 7. During that time, the developing entity draws minimal physical resources and primarily stimulates neuroemotional bonding pathways. He blinked. So, it's like a really intense week. The doctor considered. That is a gross oversimplification. But not wrong, she added. He winced at the flatness of her tone. A second medical specialist entered the room, their forms shifting slightly as they reviewed the data. The offspring does not survive beyond the cycle. Its purpose is experiential, not generational. Purposeful impermanence, she said, finally meeting his eyes again. It is considered beautiful. That hit him harder than anything else so far. On Earth, impermanence was something people fought, feared, grieved. Here it was tradition. So when you said you wanted to feel it grow, he said slowly, you weren't talking about forever. No, she said. I was talking about sharing something meaningful. Brief. Honest. The word honest lingered. The doctor tapped the display again, shrinking the schematic. Historically, misunderstandings like this escalate because humans assign permanence to reproductive language. Because it usually is, he said. Yes, the doctor replied dryly. Which is why this station has 17 protocols warning you not to take alien phrasing literally. He rubbed his face. I skimmed those. The doctor sighed, clearly unsurprised. Of course you did. She folded her hands in her lap. Her skin tone had shifted again, muted now, neither angry nor warm. Vulnerable. In my culture, she said, to invite someone into that experience is to say, I trust you with something that will exist briefly and still matter. He swallowed. And I treated it like a crisis. You treated it like a burden, she corrected gently. That was worse. The doctor glanced between them, then took a step back. I believe my presence is no longer medically necessary. There is no reproductive emergency. No diplomatic violation has occurred. There was a pause. However, the doctor added, there appears to be an emotional one. With that, they left, sealing the door behind them. The room felt suddenly too quiet. I didn't mean to hurt you, he said immediately, because silence was unbearable. Humans don't have a good track record with temporary things that matter. She studied him for a long moment. Explain. He hesitated, searching for words that wouldn't sound like excuses. We get attached. We assume that if something matters, it has to last. Otherwise, it feels like a failure. Her eyes softened, just a little. And the idea of something meaningful ending frightens you. Yes. That is very human, she said. Not mockingly. Almost fondly. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. I wasn't relieved because I didn't care. I was relieved because I thought I was about to fail at something enormous. She tilted her head, processing. Failure to you is not trying? Failure is not being ready, he said. And I didn't feel ready to be whatever everyone thought I was about to be. She looked down at her hands. I did not realize the weight you place on readiness. Yeah, he said softly. We're weird like that. A faint smile touched her lips, fleeting but real. You prepare for futures that may never come. Constantly. And yet, she said, looking back up, you travel across the stars with minimal understanding of the cultures you meet. Selective caution, he admitted. She laughed then, a quiet sound, surprised out of herself. It eased something tight in his chest. There is another aspect you should understand, she said, sobering again. While the offspring does not persist, the bond formed during that cycle often does. He raised an eyebrow. Often? Not always, she said. But it can. The implication settled between them, heavy and delicate. So this wasn't casual, he said. No, she replied. It was intentional. He leaned back against the medical console, staring at the ceiling. Of course it was. She watched him carefully. Does that change your feelings? He thought about the panic, the relief, the guilt, and beneath all of it, the quiet truth he'd been avoiding since the first night they'd worked late together. I like you, he said. More than is professionally sensible. Her skin brightened almost imperceptibly. And yet you fear hurting me, she said. Yes. That, she said softly, is also very human. Outside the sealed door, the station continued its endless hum, unaware that a misunderstanding had shifted into something far more complicated, and far more real. They sat there longer than either of them expected, the hum of the medical bay settling into the background like white noise. The station had moved on, alerts silenced, rumors already mutating into something less accurate, but the weight of what had almost happened, and what still might, lingered between them. He was the one who broke the silence, because that had become his role tonight. I owe you an apology, he said. She looked at him, expression unreadable. For which part? For reacting like your offer was a threat instead of a gift, he said without deflection. And for not asking what you meant before panicking about everything I thought it meant. Her gaze softened. You feared being irresponsible. Yes, he said. Which sounds ridiculous, considering I crossed half the galaxy on a contract and a vague sense of adventure. She made a thoughtful sound. Humans contradict themselves with impressive consistency. He smiled faintly. We call it growth. She shifted closer, not touching him, but near enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. In my culture, we believe responsibility is not measured by permanence, but by presence. That's actually kind of beautiful, he said. It is also practical, she added. You do not promise forever. You promise attention. He considered that. I'm better at attention than forever. Her lips curved upward. That was apparent. A pause followed. This one felt different, charged, but not fragile. You should know, she said carefully, that I did not choose you randomly. I was hoping you'd say that, he admitted. I observed you, she continued unembarrassed. Your patience. Your curiosity. The way you correct my errors without diminishing me. He winced. I correct your errors? You attempt to, she said dryly. That effort matters. He laughed, the sound easing the last of the tension in his chest. So this was research? No, she said firmly. This was interest. She reached for his hand then, slow enough that he had time to pull away if he wanted to. He didn't. Her fingers were warm, steady. Initiating the reproductive cycle is optional, she said. Even now. Consent must be mutual and enthusiastic. He swallowed. You're very good at this. At clarity? She asked. At making terrifying things sound manageable. She smiled. You do the same with emotions. He took a breath, grounding himself. I want to be honest with you. I expect nothing less. I'm still afraid, he said. Not of the biology. Of the aftermath. Of caring about something that ends. Her thumb brushed slightly over his knuckles. All things end. Yeah, he said. We're not great with that. And yet, she said softly, you still love. You still try. That landed somewhere deep. He looked at their joined hands, then back at her. If we did this, if we shared that experience, I wouldn't treat it like something disposable. Even if it's temporary. I would not accept anything less, she replied. A soft chime interrupted them as the medical bay door unsealed. A junior official peeked in, clearly unsure whether to interrupt. Everything resolved? they asked. She didn't let go of his hand. Yes. The official nodded rapidly and disappeared again, the door sealing behind them. He exhaled a laugh. I think the entire station is waiting to see whether we cause a historical incident or a romantic scandal. Perhaps both, she said. He squeezed her hand. So, 7 days. 7, she confirmed. And after that? She considered. After that, we see what remains. That feels very alien, he said. And very human, she countered. He nodded slowly. Okay. Her skin brightened, warmth returning fully now. Okay? Okay, he repeated. Let's do this. Carefully. Together. She leaned in, resting her forehead briefly against his, a gesture she had learned from observing human couples. It was tentative, imperfect, and sincere. Outside, the station continued to buzz, blissfully unaware that humanity's reputation for emotional intensity had just earned it a new kind of respect. And somewhere in the endless data archives, a footnote quietly updated itself. Humans do not fear impermanence because they lack courage. They fear it because they feel everything deeply, and choose to feel it anyway.